So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Jeff Marks from JVC, who's going to talk to us today about projectors.
Well, thank you, Rick. Good morning, everyone. As the slide says, my name's up there. My contact information is there, as well as my phone number. That is my cell phone number. I do encourage you, if you're on a job site and you can't get a hold of anybody at AllNet or so forth, give me a call. I'll be more than happy to help anybody out with a projector installation from JVC, or basically any questions that you have about JVC products, either now or in the future. So again, my telephone number is 630-258-5509, and my email address is jmarks@us.jvckenwood.com. Now, the biggest competition that JVC has in projectors isn't another projector brand. It's a flat panel TV. In flat panel TVs, prices are going down and the inches are going up, but still projection offers the best value per square inch and also the most versatility. In other words, projection is going to be much, much larger, and people want to go big and stay home with their home theaters, and only projection can allow them to get that 100, 110, 120, 130, 150 inch panel for a reasonable price point. And JVC, as you'll find out today, has products that are going to be starting at $2,500. You also have the ability to put a projection system in places that you couldn't put a panel. If your client has a view, there are drop-down screens that can go over in places that just you can't put a panel. So projection offers much more versatility. The other thing is when people want to have a larger screen and they want to have the sound coming from behind the panel, they can't do it on a TV. They can do it with a projection screen. Again, so you'd need a weave or a perf material to do so. But again, that is going to be for the individual that doesn't want to see speakers or wants a very clean install. I will say this though, weave and perf screens can affect picture quality, especially when you're using UHD 4K sources, because that weave or perf does affect picture quality a little bit. So keep that in mind when speccing a system of that nature. Another big thing is when you have a screen, you have the ability to actually go 16:9 or 235. When you're stuck with a flat panel TV, you're only at 16:9. So if you want 75% more of the picture using lens memory with JVC and a 235, 240, 239 screen material, your client can have that. So again, much more versatility in size, much more versatility in application. The other thing is only projectors now continue to have a 3D experience. So JVC, as well as some other screen projector manufacturers, still offer a 3D experience. And one of the reasons that 3D wasn't that well receptive is because people were trying to watch it on a small screen TV. 3D is immersive. So again, JVC projectors in D-ILA, direct drive image light amplifier category, or LCOS-based platform, all have 3D. Now, one of the common things clients, integrators may think is that, I don't have a dedicated theater room. I don't have a complete bat cave. You don't need one. With various different screen gain materials and the lumens that JVC offers, from 1800 to 2000 lumen brightness on our lamp-based system products, and 3000 lumen on our laser-based product projectors, you can put a projector in virtually any room, provided you have the right screen material in terms of the right screen gain and a modicum of light control. So again, works in any room. Now, one of the big things that when you or a client are deciding on, what makes a good projector? Well, there's many different things that go into selecting a TV, a flat panel, and or a projector. But the things are, the one thing that most people think of is resolution. I've got to have a 4K product because, well, 4K is in the forefront and resolution is important, but resolution is only one element of picture quality. There's other things like black level and contrast, color, brightness, and resolution. And so resolution is one component part of that. Contrast is the thing that makes the picture pop. In other words, the contrast is the difference between dark and light, or black and white. And the wider that contrast is, the more realism you're going to have, the more three-dimensional that picture is, the more that you're going to be able to say, wow, that's an amazing picture. Color quality, or color gamut, is also a very big element. And every JVC projector is going to give you the most in color purity, whether it's sRGB color space, whether it's DCI-P3 color space, or whether it's BT 2020 color space. JVC's got that covered, and that's going to ensure that you have that. And brightness. Brightness is going to be very important to reproducing the right color gamut, as well as high dynamic range content like HDR broadcast. Now, how does JVC do this? JVC is going to give you the resolution with 4K E-shift. We'll talk about that. One of the biggest elements that JVC you can talk to a customer intelligently about is the fact that JVC on every single D-ILA projector uses all glass lenses. Now, when I say lenses, we use 17 or 16 different glass lenses in every one of our projectors, depending upon the model, and they're all glass. Every other company under $25,000 uses a glass and polymer mixture. In other words, glass and plastic. That glass is vitally important to resolution, and that's why with combination of JVC E-shift 5 and all glass lenses, JVC can absolutely compete with any native 4K product. And we'll talk about that and say what the press says about JVC compared to native 4K products. And the reason we compete and exceed that 4K product in resolution is because of that all glass lens. Black level and contrast. JVC's 3-chip D-ILA engine is going to make sure that you get the contrast you deserve, whether it's native or dynamic contrast. We'll talk today about the differences between native and dynamic contrast, but the reality is this: people don't, they want to see that dimensionality in a picture, and it's contrast that does that, and JVC does contrast better than anybody else in the industry. Now, on the JVC D-ILA 790 and 990, we do 100% of DCI-P3 color space, and what that means to each and every one of you is that you're going to get a wider color gamut. Now, that wider color gamut is going to be the difference between the greens and the blues and purples and reds. You're going to have a much wider and more color. And more is in this case much better. So you're going to have that, and of course we do 80% of BT 2020 color space. So on the 790, 990, which represents a $6,000 and an $8,000 price point, those products are going to ensure that you get the very, very best. And in brightness, JVC uses a 265 watt high pressure lamp. Each of our products start at 1800 lumens, 1900 lumens, and 2000 lumens. As I said before, the RS4500 or native 4K laser-based fluorescent laser phosphor lights engine is 3000 lumens. So brightness, color, contrast, resolution, JVC's got it all covered. Now, some of the biggest things that differentiate JVC in the industry versus the competition is the 790 or the 590. The 790 and the 990 give you the very best black level, the highest native contrast, as well as native dynamic contrast. As I said before, we use all glass lenses. They're highest in class in brightness, and also the most future-proof when it comes to HDMI connectivity. I'm going to speak volumes about that today as well, because that's very, very, very important going forward, especially with streaming services, because streaming services are now broadcasting at 4K 60 frames per second, and without a 18 gigabit per second HDMI chipset, you're not going to be able to get 10-bit color with a 4K 60p source. And especially, and that's for streaming content, in terms of Netflix, Hulu, those kind of things. Another thing that's new for this year versus in years in past, JVC has evolved 4K eShift, and we've been our 5th generation eShift 5 now. I'll talk to you about that and how that actually has improved over previous generations of eShift. And the intelligent lens aperture also improves HDR and UHD content by either making it brighter and also being able to use the intelligent lens aperture. In other words, you can close down or make it darker or open it up, make it brighter, depending upon the installation, depending upon the screen, and depending upon the ambient light of the room. We also are going to give you a 20% brighter HDR color profile than we did on last year's 770 and 990, or 970, excuse me. That's going to give you 20% brighter than we had previously. And a big issue for the customer and for you is JVC now offers a 3-year advanced exchange warranty. So on the 590, 790, and 990, we offer across the board 3-year advanced exchange warranty, meaning that if your client for a period of 3 years has a problem with the projector, JVC, myself, will work with you, the integrator, to determine that that product is in fact defective. If it is defective, JVC will send a replacement unit out in that period of 3 years. For that period of 3 years, within 4 to 5 working days, and have that in so you can install that, take it down, and put it up at the same time. You, of course, will have to work with the customer on your time. JVC isn't paying for your time to take it down and put it up, but we are offering that so it doesn't go to service and is gone for any length of time. So again, a 3-year advanced exchange warranty on the 590, 790, and on the 990. And that is new from last year's 2, 3, and 5-year warranties. Now it's 3-year advanced exchange across the board. Our D-ILA RS4500 is JVC's native 4K projector. Native 4K at 4096 by 2160. The other products I was talking about use the chipset of 1920 by 1080. So 1920 by 1080 full HD. Now this is a native chipset of 4096 by 2160. This offers 3000 lumens of brightness, and that's brought to you by a proprietary fluorescent laser phosphor light engine. We use as a premium lens. As I said, all JVC D-ILA projectors use an all-glass lens. This actually uses a all-glass lens, but it's a larger lens versus 64 millimeters in diameter to 100 millimeter diameter lens. That is very important. As the screen sizes increase, you need to have a larger lens so you don't get any vignetting or haloing on the picture. So with a larger diameter, you're going to get more screen uniformity, especially that's important with HDR, because picture HDR is going to be brighter across the entire screen, not just in the middle of the screen. So when you have a premium installation and a larger screen, I'd say of above 150 inch to 220 inch screen sizes, the RS4500 is going to give you that ability to do so. This is the world's only THX certified 4K projector. JVC has a long history of THX accreditation on projectors. We were the first projector to be THX certified. We're the first 3D projector THX certified, and now we are also the first and only, in this point, THX 4K certified projector with the RS4500. And of course, it still uses the most future-proof HDMI connectivity in 18 gigabit per second. Now that connectivity, the next generation of connectivity will have to go up to 48 gigabits per second in order to give you 8K, but that's ways down the road. So for right now, 18 gigabits per second is as good as it gets, and it's going to be as good as it gets for a while, because the next leap to get native 8K is going to require 48 gigabits per second. So that's a big benefit. That 3000 lumen brightness is going to from that fluorescent laser phosphor light engine is going to give you 20,000 hours of life expectancy. Conversely, 4,500 hours half-life on our lamp-based systems. So 20,000 hour lifespan. The dynamic light source control is also on this. This also gives you quick power on and off. Lamp-based systems are going to have some rise in time in order to turn them off or turn them on, and also turn them off. It takes some time. With a laser-based system, it's much quicker rise and fall time for the power on and off cycles, and also very stable color, because if any one of the 48 laser diodes goes out, the client would never know that. You would never see that, because there's 47 other laser diodes in that to take up its power. Now, in a lamp-based system, a lamp is either on or it's off or it's dimming in its entire life cycle. So a laser-based system does offer some unique advantages, especially in high-activity installations or high-use installations. A laser-based system is preferred. That does come with a premium price, though. It's a $35,000 projector, versus $4,000, $6,000, $8,000 respectively on the $590, $790, and $990. Every JVC projector that is D-ILA based has a low latency mode. This becomes very important for anyone that wants to use gaming. 2 years ago, JVC had a 140 millisecond latency. In other words, it was 7 frames behind from click to visual. Now it's down to 2 frames, down to 37 milliseconds. So that means for gaming, for PlayStations, for Xbox, for high-end gaming, our projectors are going to be a preferred projector compared to the competition. Matter of fact, even Escent says they do not use them with projection. So that's something that I'm telling you, JVC is going to be the preferred system for gaming, a preferred manufacturer. As you see here in this slide, this is just showing you all kinds of various different UHD 4K source content. Now, 4K does not necessarily mean that is going to give you HDR. 4K, there's non-HDR, and 4K UHD that means that you're going to get wider color gamut. You're going to have high dynamic range content, and these are things that are going to make the picture look better. Resolution alone, and if it doesn't have HDR and it doesn't have a wider color gamut, doesn't make the picture look better on smaller screens. It just doesn't. That's why the broadcast industry, especially the sports broadcast industry, is now leaning for future broadcasts, not so much for 4K, but improving it into HDR, high dynamic range, because HDR can be seen on any size screen. And JVC uses an 18 gigabit per second chipset on every one of our projectors that is D-ILA based. Actually, we use that on every projector. Even the new projector we're going to talk about, we use an 18 gigabit per second projector. Every one of our D-ILA projectors are going to give you a wider color gamut than the competition because of the 18 gigabits per second, and also is going to give you 4K 60 frames per second at 10-bit color. Now, the difference between 8 and 10-bit color is dramatic, and it is going to be a visual difference. But again, from UHD Blu-rays to Kaleidoscape to various different gaming platforms, from PS4 to Xbox to 4K streaming platforms, Roku 4, Amazon Fire, Apple 4K TV, these systems do have, each and every one of them have the ability to reproduce 4K 60 frames per second. Now, in UHD land and the UHD Blu-ray player, there's only a couple discs that are 4K 60p. One is Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, and I use that. If we were actually live right now, I'd be demonstrating that to you to show you what the difference is between a JVC, brand X, brand Y, and brand Z in terms of picture quality, because in some cases, you wouldn't be able to watch that disc, and in other cases, you would only see that in 8-bit color, and you'd see a lot of banding in that. So UHD, every new release now is done in UHD 4K ultra high definition, as well as high dynamic range content with 10-bit color. And as I said, color and contrast, resolution and brightness all affect picture quality. Now, if I were to take brand X and brand Y projector right now and put in Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, as I said, and I put that into a competition piece, say a Sony VW285, a Sony VW385 native 4K projector, an Escent 6040, 5040, any of those products, what would happen is you would not be able to see the picture, and if you could, it would only be in 8-bit color. that is why, again, JVC projectors, starting with our entry-level piece at as low as $2,500 with the LX-UHIB, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Every one of our projectors either has at least one or two, in most cases two, 18 gigabit per second chipsets. And it will give you that 4K 60p at 10-bit color along with high dynamic range content. Now, performance features, as I said before, every JVC projector is either 1800, 1900, or 2000 lumens, or 3000 lumens on the 4500. That's going to give you the ability to be larger screens, more ambient light and higher ambient light conditions, and also give you a much brighter picture across all screen sizes, and that's very important as well compared to our competition. The only competing projector that has more lumens than JVC would be Escent in a true home theater projector that has all the bells, lights, and whistles that you would expect from this, but at the same time, contrast, nothing can compare to JVC. In terms of contrast, Escent certainly can't, but there are some 2200 lumen projectors out there. But at the same time, your picture quality is going to suffer accordingly because the color isn't there, the contrast isn't there, as well as the HDMI chipset isn't there. Now, JVC versus native 4K. This is where the 900-pound elephant that's in the room all the time is that, well, JVC is not native 4K and Sony is. The reality is that 4096 by 2160 chipset and that 1920 by 1080 chipset that JVC uses are completely different. As you can tell by the numbers, there's 4 times more pixels on a Sony than there are a JVC eShift projector. But I want you to understand how eShift works, and then at the end of the day, at the end of this presentation, I want to show you why that doesn't really matter a whole hell of a lot, because if picture quality, if it looks better, and I suggest to each and every one of you, if I ask you this question and you ask every one of your clients this question, do you want the very best picture quality you can afford today? Every one of you and every one of your clients is going to answer the question with an affirmative, yes, of course I want the best picture quality. And as I started off this presentation before today with picture quality is made up of resolution, it's made up of color, it's made up of brightness, and it's made up of contrast, gamma, all these other nuances that are there. All those ingredients go into that cake, and those ingredients make a stellar cake. One ingredient does not make a cake. It's all the ingredients, and all those ingredients have to be top-notch in order to get a wonderful tasting cake, as well as the highest performance and picture quality. And how JVC achieves that resolution is real simple. We use eShift. Now, eShift is a series of images that are captured by an algorithm that JVC uses called eShift. A 4K image comes into a 1920 by 1080 chip. In other words, 8 million pixels are going to come into a chip that only handles 2 million. How can I get 8 million out of something that handles 2 million? Well, the answer is you can't. So what do? We have to use some FM, some freaking magic here, some 4K eShift 5 magic, if you will. So what we do is we sample 2 million prime pixels out of that first batch of 8K image pixels that are coming in from a 4K source. There's only 2 million pixels that can reproduce, so guess what? We have to reproduce 2 million pixels. Then 120th second later, we go back and we sample 2 million more pixels, and we put those pixels, though, we shift them down and over a half a pixel. Now, JVC's been doing this longer than anybody. Other manufacturers like Escent have an e-shifting system as well. And so does, for that matter, DLP uses an e-shift or pixel shifting technologies as well. But effectively what happens is if I put those two A frame, B frame, A frame, B frame over 120 times a second, what happens is I effectively get 4 times the number of pixels that was in the same space that one was. So if I have 4 times more pixels, 4 times 2 million is 8 million. Therefore, I'm seeing 8 million effective pixels at one time. Now, versus natively, they're all there. In eShift, it does it through eShift. But what happens is it's with the double speed on 1920 by 1080 pixels. It's shifted, unshifted, shifted, unshifted. Your eyes and your ears, or your eyes, not your ears, your eyes and your brain work together, and so you don't see that flashing, and therefore you actually see 8 million effective pixels on the screen. So JVC 4K eShift 5 projectors are going to give you the resolution that you deserve, the customer's demands, but at the same time, not only are they going to give you the resolution, but they're going to give you the color, the brightness, the contrast, the gamma, everything that other manufacturers cannot. And if you want the very best in 4K from JVC, that's going to cost, native 4K, it's going to cost you $35,000. Now, JVC has been able to make a projector that is lower cost than is native, but the problem is it would affect picture quality adversely. In other words, if we brought out a 4K projector this year, what would happen is the picture quality would be less than what we had last year. Because if, like a camera, and I'm not making, like a camera, cameras have f-stops, lenses have f-stops. Chipsets have something similar to an f-stop, but I'm using this as an example. If you have a brighter, faster lens, it's going to be brighter. In other words, you're going to have more contrast out of that lens if you were to say on the DSLR. That would be, let's call that a 2 megapixel D-ILA chipset. If we were to bring out a 4K lens, and by the way, other companies suffer from the same laws of physics as JVC does, that would be a much slower, a much less bright f-stop. In other words, that would be like a 2.2 f-stop. So the difference in the f-stop and a camera lens versus those two numbers is pretty dramatic in terms of its ability to give you lumens and contrast. And that's why JVC has chose not to make a 4K projector, native 4K projector, at lower value price points, because it would affect picture quality. And I assure you, every one of you and every one of your clients wants the very best picture quality going forward, and JVC will continue to do that. Now, the difference between 4K eShift 4 and 4K eShift 5 from last year is we looked at the original data, 8.3 million pixels. We sampled 2 frames on eShift 4. Now we sample all the data versus 4.15 million. Now we are sampling 8.3 million, all the data. Plus we sample the surrounding pixels. So in the black areas you see in that image, it says eShift 4 and eShift 5. You can see the resolved image on the right of eShift 5 has far more information on it than the eShift 4 did. And that's going to effectively give you this much better picture quality, as you see this year on JVC's 2018 line. So eShift 5 really does an outstanding job, and as I'll show you in a moment, you'll see that in some of the reviews that JVC has gotten versus the competition in both side-by-side comparisons and also subjective comparisons. And as we all know, subjective experience is your experience, so no one can tell you what you see is right or wrong. It's how you perceive the world. And of course, if you have a 2K sources, and I suggest everyone is going to be watching the vast majority of 2K or full HD sources, if eShift 5 is going to take that 2K information and bring it up to 4K as well. And eShift can be turned on and eShift can be turned off. That's under clear, that is going to be in the menu system. You turn it on and off, and the only reason you ever want to turn it off is if you want to show a client the difference between 4K and 2K eShift, and that's available in the menu system. As I've said before, JVC's contrast is preeminent in the industry. We do contrast better than anybody else. In other words, the difference between black and white, bright and dark, and what we do and how we do it is what makes JVC projectors so visually stunning. Everyone measures contrast the same way at least half the time. Contrast is measured when what you see right now is a white screen. That white screen is as bright as that image can ever be on the screen that you're watching it. And that's measured at a foot away from the screen. and you take an image and it measures the lumens at that point, right? Now, what happens differently when JVC measures native contrast, we project black. Right now, we're projecting a black image on the screen, whatever screen you're looking at. In the environment that you're looking at it in, that screen can no longer, it can't get any blacker than it is right now in the environment you're in with light that you're in. That's how native contrast is measured, projecting black and projecting white and measuring the difference. That's why the native contrast is always a much lower number, but it's a real number because dynamic contrast measures it this way. It projects white, and then effectively you turn your projector, you turn your panel, you turn your computer, you turn your phone off. And then with it in the off state, well, you can't make it any blacker than off. But the reality is you don't watch your panel, your projector, your phone, your iPad on or off, because what you do is you watch it with a series of on and off, or black and white in this case. You produce black and produce white at the same time, but there's this little thing called color. So when we talk about native contrast, we talk about the ability to get black, white, and color all at the same time. And when we talk about dynamic contrast, all that means is somebody's measured something with a projecting white and then turned the product off. And I suggest to you, everybody wants the very best in picture quality, and native contrast is going to be, or dynamic contrast in this case, because JVC is the larger numbers, no matter what you do, how you cut it. Native contrast on the 790, 990 are 160,000 to 1, 130,000 to 1, and also 40,000 to 1. Native contrast on the 590. Compare that to a typical front projector, that's 8,000 to 1. Now, these numbers that I'm going to give you in dynamic terms, that's 1.6 million to 1 dynamic contrast, 1.3 million to 1 dynamic contrast, 400,000 to 1 dynamic contrast, and 80,000 to 1 dynamic contrast for typical products. Now, our products also have an intelligent lens aperture. So as I said before, you can actually make the product darker or the image brighter, depending upon how you want to adjust your lens aperture. And that's also going to be improved. It has been improved for 4K UHD content, because last year you couldn't do that with UHD 4K content. This year you can. So making it brighter by opening it up, or making it darker, or closing it down, depending upon where you want to be in the environment that you're in, the room that you're in, the ambient light you're in, JVC can give you that flexibility. Those are those dynamic contrast numbers I just spoke about. As I said before, JVC continues to have 3D capabilities. That 3D capability is going to give you the possibility of, no matter if you have a legacy JVC projector from 7 years ago, those same 3D glasses will work, and the same 3D emitter will work, although they might have been IR. The newest glasses and newest emitter are RF, but again, RF glasses work with RF emitters, and infrared works with infrared. But again, regardless of the age of the glasses and emitter, it'll work with any current JVC projector or vice versa. Installation features. The AllNet has strong mounts for each of the products from JVC. The only product that strong mounts doesn't make a mount for is the RS4500. Only Chief makes that, and that's a VCM 105J projector mount. But there are strong mounts available for every JVC projector that is sold as well. When mounting a projector, it's very, very important to make sure that the projector it doesn't have any tilt, pitch, or yaw. In other words, parallel to the floor, parallel to the screen, and also parallel and actually, so there doesn't have any roll either, so it has to be level to the floor. So that's very important. That's where lens shift comes in. Never, ever, ever use keystoning on anything from JVC. If you have to use keystone, either you bought the wrong projector, And if you have to use keystoning, don't use a JVC because it'll destroy picture. But the little secret is it's going to destroy the picture on anything you use keystoning on. So vertical and horizontal lens shift are paramount for home theater application. And JVC has a tremendous amount of vertical and horizontal lens shift, 34% left or right, and also 80% up or down. And that's very, very robust compared to the industry. So again, you don't have to use keystoning, use the lens shift, and especially with some lower price projectors, some lower price projectors don't offer any any lens shift. If they do, they only offer vertical lens shift, not horizontal. So in other words, you have to mount it exactly at the one point in space that it's perfect. And if you can't, then you have to use keystoning. If you use keystoning, it destroys picture. Just one click of keystoning destroys picture. The other thing that JVC offers from $590, $790, $990, we continue to have lens memory. Now, lens memory is going to ensure that you can use the average of 5 or 10 different lens memories for a 4x3, a 16x9, a 235, a 240, any anamorphic screen sizes that you have. Lens memory is going to ensure that you have the very best in terms of flexibility. Some competing products at the $4,000 price point or $5,000 price point don't have lens memory. The Sony VW285 doesn't have lens memory. Even our 590 at $4,000 has that feature. So lens memory allows you to get a 235, 240, 239 screen and fill that up by shooting the letterboxing bars above and below and ensuring that you have over 75% more image with the anamorphic screen when using lens memory. And you don't have to use an anamorphic lens to do so. So the black bars are shot above and below. So when a guy or gal says they want, they watch either some movies and sports and TV, but the movies are one of their big things. An anamorphic screen is almost a must because you're going to get 75% more picture with lens memory. And without the use of a anamorphic lens. But at the same time, if they want an anamorphic lens, they're made. Panamorph still is in business, and they still continue to make anamorphic lenses. And anamorphic lenses do give you better picture quality than lens memory because lens memory is just making every pixel larger when it's in 235 or 240 or 239 aspect ratio. So an anamorphic lens does give you some better flexibility. Every JVC projector uses 2 HDMI full speed, full spec HDMI 18 gigabit per second chipset. And so both inputs are 18 gigabit per second, 12 volt trigger. And then the lamp panel is back here. Take one screw out of the door off the lamp. Take 2 screws out of the lamp, replace the lamp so it's user replaceable, or you can replace it very easily on that. Now on the connectivity for the D-ILA RS4500, again, 2 HDMI inputs of 18 gigabit per second. Because this doesn't use a lamp, it uses a laser. There is no lamp panel on the back of this. And you're going to get the greatest flexibility out of that as well. A couple things I want to talk about now is I'm going to compare JVC to Sony. And I want you to understand that this is black and white. This is not an opinion. This is not JVC bad-mouthing Sony or anything, but this is simply the facts. Black and white facts, and this is all the data that comes off of our website as well as Sony's website. The first thing is that Sony is native 4K from the $5,000 to $8,000 price point. JVC from $4,000 to $8,000 is eShift 5. We talked about the difference. Lenses. JVC is an all-glass lens across the board. Sony uses a hybrid lens, which is glass and polymer. JVC on the 790 and 990 has a wider color gamut, a DCI-P3, so you're going to have much more color, many more colors, and more vivid colors. The Sony products don't offer DCI-P3 color space. Lumens. On the Sony products, the 285 and 385, that's 1,500 lumens. JVC starts at 1,800, 1,900, or 2,000 lumens. And the other thing is that when we talk about contrast, we can compare contrast all day long because JVC does measure natively as well as dynamically. JVC is going to give you 400,000 to 1, 1.3 million to 1, or 1.6 million to 1 dynamic contrast. Sony is limited to 200,000 to one on the 385, the $8,000, and the 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 $5,000 model isn't even rated at contrast. So again, contrast, brightness, color, image quality could also be called resolution, glass lenses assist in that HDMI chipset. In order to get an 18 gigabit per second chipset from Sony and or even Epson, you have to go up to $25,000 to get that on the 885. Every JVC projector is 18 gigabit per second chipset, either 1 or 2. The only one that has 1 we haven't even talked about yet. So you're going to get 10-bit color. With Sony, you only get 8-bit color. Adjustable iris control or lens aperture on JVC projectors. All 3 of them have that. Only the 385 and Sony at $8,000 offers that. Dynamic iris, only the $8,000 model offers that. JVC at $4,000, $6,000, and $8,000 has that. Lens memory, as I talked about before. JVC has lens memory that at $4,000. Sony, you have to go to $8,000 to get lens memory. The noise level is not that big a deal, although it is 4 dB more. Most people will tell you 3 dB is a difference, a slight difference in change of where you can hear the difference. And then again, warranty, JVC offers that 3-year advanced replacement exchange warranty. So that's a big difference versus parts and labor and sending it into service. The next thing is I want to just differentiate what 10-bit and 8-bit color means. If you look at those purple boxes there, you'll notice on the box on the left that you have 8-bit color. In the box right, you have 10-bit color. In other words, 10-bit is very smooth. 8-bit offers banding, and that's one of the biggest differences between 4K 60p 8-bit color and 4K 60p 10-bit color. And that 18 gigabit per second chipset is paramount to make sure that you don't get banding on any source material. The table on the bottom there shows the brightness between JVC and Sony and the screen sizes. Given a 1.3-inch gain screen, you notice all the different screen sizes in green. We'll do that, but when you start getting past a 120-inch screen, 1500 lumens just doesn't cut it much longer for HDR content, because you require more lumens for HDR content. JVC does across the board in that. Let's talk about some of the things the press has recently said about JVC. I mean recently, so in the March issue of Sound and Vision, the projectors that were best in class. In other words, this is the issue that they rate every different brand, every different category of home theater electronics. In projectors and screens, JVC was rated number 1 and number 2. Obviously, the RS-4500 was rated number 1 at $35,000. It should be rated number 1. It's one of the more expensive ones. Yet there's a Sony product that's above that at $60,000. So the RS-4500 was rated number 1, and the second best projector was a D-ILA 790, which is a $6,000 projector that is going to give you better picture quality than anything else out there at that price point. And the third one was a Sony VW285 at $5,000. So, and that's a native 4K. So as you can see, JVC is very, very well thought of, especially currently, and it's been years in past. I also wanted to talk about some of the differences when you do a direct shootout. JVC, in the April issue of Sound and Vision, there was a shootout between a Sony 285 and a JVC 790. These products are comparatively priced $6,000 for the JVC, $5,000 for the 285. To be fair about it, the 285 and 385 are basically almost the same projector. The only difference is the 385 has lens memory, and it also has an adjustable iris. Interesting enough, neither one of these was using the adjustable iris for these claims. But the bottom line was the JVC overall performance with black level, shadow detail, brightness, color, and resolution makes it the best sub $8,000 projector that this reviewer's ever tested. So that's another something that you can give to your clients if they're asking about resolution out there. Tom Norton and Chris Eberly both have, reviewed JVC projectors, and Tom says not only have they not seen a better from any projector or at near the JVC's price, it knocked my socks off with vivid images, crisp detail, and brilliant color. And that was on the 790. Chris Eberly basically writes that the detail was stunning as E-Shift provided a clarity on par with native 4K projectors I've watched. Only the RS4500 can boast the slightest edge in that department. In other words, the 4500 is a $35,000 projector. They were comparing a $6,000 projector in this review, a JVC $6,000 projector. So that's another thing about picture quality. So that's it for D-ILA. I want to talk about a new product that JVC's come up with, the new DLP 4K compact projector. This model is called a LX-UHIB. This product from AllNet will be shipping sometime mid-May. And this is a $2,500 DLP, a DMD, digital micromirror device. This product has a special on it when you buy a Dragonfly screen and the $2,500 DLX-UH1. These are retail prices I'm giving you. You will also get a $100 sales credit on the purchase if you purchase a Dragonfly screen and a JVC LX-UH1 from AllNet at that time. Now,
Hey, Jeff.
yes.
Hey, Rick here from AllNet. Yeah, so the way we're going to do that, everyone, is this is only for you who are attending the session, and it's a one-to-one deal with no limits. So if you send in a PO with 10 projectors and 10 screens, then you get a $100 deduction from invoice on each one of those. That means you get your $100 instantly. So we're happy to make the offer, and yeah, we hope that some of you are able to take advantage of this.
So I want to talk about the fact that this projector on this slide says 4K UHD. The Consumer Electronics Association has made it such that DLP projectors, digital micromirror devices, using tilt, roll, and pitch technology, can be claimed to be native 4K. So this is a $2,500 native 4K projector that uses a 1920 by 1080 chipset. And the reason that the CEA has given DLP projectors this ability seemingly is because each micromirror can be responsible for 4 pixels in the screen. It flashes 4 times. Now it does use tilt, pitch, and roll to do that. I want to be very clear to you that there are other products that are in DLP that are claiming to be 4K UHD but they're still using 1920 by 1080. Now LCOS, Sony, and JVC products cannot claim to be 4K using an E-shift device or a pixel shifting device, as this is a pixel shifting device, because it only resolves 2 pixels at a time versus 4. But at the same time, I want to be very clear that this can be represented with complete honesty and to your client as a 4K UHD projector. But if you read the specs on this projector or other projectors of its ilk in a DLP, they will tell you it's 1920 by 1080 chipset. So how can it be? Well, the reality is because each micromirror is responsible for 4 pixels on the screen using that tilt, pitch, and roll DMD technology. It'll give you 3840 by 2160 resolution on the screen. Now, this projector also is unique in the industry as a DLP projector because no other DLP projector offers lens shift. If it does, it offers it in terms of vertical and not horizontal. And if you don't have horizontal lens shift or vertical lens shift, you have to mount it exactly at the perfect position in space for that height of that screen, and that's just not practical. And if you do, and if you can't do that, you have to use keystoning. And I told you before, keystoning is a monster of a problem when it comes to resolution. It destroys it. So the LX-UHIB is the only projector in DLP that's $2,500 or less that offers lens shift. Now it offers a wide zoom range of 1.6 times zoom. It's very, very small. It's only 13 inches by 13 inches by 5 inches. It weighs under 10 pounds, but it's a flamethrower at 2,000 lumens for the size of that projector. And it's also HDR10 compatible with hybrid log gamma. And then it will give you 100% of sRGB color space. Now, other projectors in this case may not even give you 100% of sRGB color space. This does, but it will also give you the ability to give you high dynamic range content as well. Now, this does come in white. That will be available in June of this year in white. The price point is still $24.99 on this, but again, that will be available in June. If we compare this to brand X and brand Y, Optima and BenQ, JVC has lens shift. Optima has some lens shift, but it's not vertical or not horizontal. It's only vertical lens shift. The BenQ 2550 does not have any lens shift at all. JVC has a vertical shift of 60%. The Optima is only plus 15, and the BenQ has none. Horizontal is plus or minus 23%. The Optima has none. The BenQ has none. Zoom range is 1.6 times, same as the Optima UH 6500, and then also the BenQ zoom 1.2 times zoom. And keystoning plus or minus 30, but again, keystoning, don't use it, all right? Because you don't have to on a JVC because you have lens shift. Now, the size, as I said before, this is relatively small. It's 13.1 by 13.1 by 5.3 inches. The blue MK9 there is what represents a typical JVC projector. And the red one is what the JVC LX-UHIB size is. So you can see the relative to our normal projectors. That MK9 is JVC's code name for a model year, but that represents our current model lineup footprint in the blue area. HDR compatibility, and it's also HDR compatible when it has 3 selectable HDR gamma curves. So depending upon the nit level of broadcaster you're looking, you can adjust that to get better picture quality. JVC does hybrid log gamma. As well as the fact that, as I talked about ad nauseum already, that 18 gigabit per second chipset on the HDMI 1 input on this projector only is going to give you the ability to have full 4K 60p 10-bit color, where other products do not have that on there. Now, I'm not saying other DLP products, but I am saying other products from that are not DLP, because most DLP projectors have an 18 gigabit per second chipset. Most, except for the exception of JVC projectors, have 18 gigabit. Everybody else uses 10.2 or 13.5 gigabits per second. So the big thing here is going to give you the lens shift. And will give you the ability to be BT 2020 compatible with the color space of Rec 709 on there. It says color space. That is sRGB, 100% sRGB color space with BT 2020 compatibility. And with JVC LX-UHIB uses an RGB 6-segment chipset from the digital micromirror versus RGBW, which is white. This is using giving you much deeper color with a dual RGB color micromirrors on there. And as it says, about 10.2 pounds. So I'd like to open this up to questions in the last couple minutes we have and answer those accordingly. So Rick, I turn it back to you.
Okay, I've got a couple questions here from the audience. So Eric is asking on the D-ILA product,
Yes.
what are the performance improvements beyond the iris control of the 590 versus the 790 and 990?
The lumens, the lumen output, the fact that you have you have hand-selected chips, you have hand-calibrated chips, and that hand-calibrated chipset with the D-ILA chipset and hand-calibrated as also as hand-selected all-glass lenses on the 990 are going to give you the improvement both in contrast and also brightness. So that's where the difference is in price point come from the 790 and 990 is hand-selected chipset, hand-selected all-glass lenses, and both of those are going to improve the color. Excuse me, not the color. It's going to improve the contrast from 1.3 130,001 to 160,001 native, or 1.3 to 1.6 million dynamic, as well as going from 1900 lumens to 2000 lumens, and that's the difference there.
Okay, thank you. Also from Eric, he's asking about the LX-UHIB. He's asking some of the other 0.47-inch micro mirror based projectors have a little bit of an overscan gray border that shows up around the image. He wanted to know if this is something that we can count on with the LX-UHIB or if it has been blanked.
That is inherent to that chipset.
Okay. And is there a blanking, or is it strictly an LCOS technology?
That is a DMD micro mirror. That is the chipset limitation from Texas Instruments.
Okay.
So what I'm telling you is it's the same as anybody else that uses that chipset.
Okay. 2 questions coming in from Jim. He wants to know about whether the LX-UHIB would be a good choice for a conference room.
Provided that conference room isn't has some blinds in it, there would be absolutely no reason why not to use that. The only other thing that I would mention is knowing what control systems they are using, because in many conference rooms they're using control systems. I would want to know about what the control system they were using, and would need to find out more compatibility on it, because I've not worked with this projector at all in terms of control. So I don't know what is and isn't compatible with that.
Okay, but you say it is an RS-232 serial controlled projector?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I can't be of help at this point in answering what's best in terms of control, or if there are any limitations. I just don't know at this time.
Okay. All right, and then also from Jim, he wants to know about the LX-UHIB, if it has any capability for lens memories.
No, it does not. So the 590 is our least expensive product of $4,000 that has lens memory.
Okay. I think those are all the questions that we've got on the questions board. If anyone else has any additional questions, you're welcome to type them in. Also, so can we go back to talking about control? I know that some of the dealers that are doing high-level control systems really like the JVC D-ILA projectors.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about how easy they are to control.
Well, not that it applies to necessarily most of your dealers, but JVC #1 is compatible with Control 4. It does use a Control 4 SDDP. But virtually any high-end control system works either via LAN or RS-232 with JVC. So whether it's Elan, whether it's Savant, whether it's the hundreds of other systems, not hundreds, tens of systems, we have maintained a constant control compatibility throughout the years. We just add control capability. We don't change anything. Every single thing is discrete. Every every command is a discrete command, whether it's power on, power off, whether it's lens memory, everything can be programmed in the macro and become discrete. So I don't know if that answers your question or enlightens anything, but every control system has their own nuances and things. But we seem to be fairly. The one thing I can tell you is JVC has no plans on changing any of the control protocols. The only thing we plan on doing is that as we add a feature, we'll make sure that's discrete, and then that can just be put in accordingly.
All right, thanks for bringing that up. I mentioned it because it's one of the high points that we hear back from the dealers who exclusively use JVC. That's part of the reason why they exclusively use JVC, is they know that it's going to be able to be controlled and it's going to do what they want it to do every single time.
Well, Rick, thanks for that setup question. That was good. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, let's look at chat and questions one more time. I think we've addressed everyone.
Well, I appreciate everyone's time and spending an hour with JVC and AllNet today. Hopefully that can translate into sales and answer some of your questions, and also the fact that AllNet is offering some cool specials on the LX-UHIB. Don't forget that $100 off on the Dragonfly screen. That's not limited to just one. If you order, you order 30, as Chad said, or Rick said, excuse me. Please do order 30 of them. Order 30 screens, and don't forget the strong mounts for every projector that you sell, because you need to mount that as well. So that's it.
All right. And then once again, what's the ship date on the UH1?
Mid-May on the black and mid-June on the white.
Okay, so we're looking at just a couple weeks.
Yes.
Nice.
And
okay.
I will tell you also, and I'm sure everyone always tells you this, order early and often. There is a back order on those products right now, but that product is back ordered right now in the terms of initial shipments have been filled, and they have exceeded expectation on that product. So if you think you have a need, order it now, because it won't probably get filled until a little bit later. I don't know what your back order is right now, Rick, but we are going to be in a back order situation on both of those products.
Well, we're in a similar situation, and AllNet is always a first in, first out. So first orders always get first right of refusal on the earliest shipments. So if anyone has, like Jeff said, if you have a customer that's on the fence, feel free to put the order in, and we'll give you a call when the product hits the dock, and you get first right of refusal based on your spot in line. And if the customer hasn't given you your deposit, or if the project gets pushed back, we can always move you to the back of the line. So please feel free just to reach out to your AllNet sales contact, or reach out to me, and we can help you get your spot in the line so you can get your projector early. Because I firmly believe this is going to be one of the hot projectors of the summer. So, all right, everyone. Thank you again for your time today. If anyone has any questions about redeeming the CEDIA CEU credit, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Bill Zidek. And thank you again for participating in the AllNet weekly webinar series. And thanks again to JVC for being our presenters for this week. We're going to go ahead and end the webinar now.
Thanks again.